What is up, everybody? Been a while since I've done this, huh? Been a while since we've had a just like a normal AMA Friday afternoon live stream, huh? Feels good to be back. Wild week of free agency. I'm still not sure if I can keep track of everybody that's moving. We had the freaking Keenan Allen trade last night. What the heck is going on in the NFL, man? Is absolutely insane. So I'm sure I'm sure we have a lot to talk about. I'm sure that you guys all have a bunch of maybe questions or something like that related to new values for players. What the heck is going on in your rosters? Because I'm sure like half of your players probably got a new team in some capacity or got affected by somebody who's on a new team in some capacity. So this is going to be fun. So if you guys have any questions, just drop them down into the comment section, and I'm here to hang out for the next hour, I guess, and it'll just be chill and fun. But Caleb is in the chat. Addison with the W in the Justin Herbert debate. I said that Justin Herbert was a sell a couple weeks ago in Dynasty, more so just because of the Harbaugh offense, the Greg Roman offense. This was prior to the Keenan Allen and Mike Williams stuff. But basically, I was just saying that if you can move Herbert for Lamar or Burrow or Stroud or Kyler or somebody like that, it just feels safer and better to have that at the top of your quarterbacks in Superflex than a Justin Herbert. And then everything exploded in Justin Herbert's face. And now it seems like he's probably honestly going to end up being a buy now if people swing too far in the opposite direction, because Justin put out a tweet last night saying that, as soon as LA basically drafts Malik Neighbors at 5, everybody's going to be back in on Justin Herbert because he's going to have an alpha wide receiver 1 then at that point. So if this creates any sort of a dip, like if you can trade, basically, I think the way that I see it is if you can move like Brock Purdy in a second for Justin Herbert, maybe even like Trevor Lawrence and something, maybe not like a second, but like a weird piece, like a throw-in piece or something like that to move up to get Justin Herbert, I would do that. Or anybody really in that kind of tier. Kirk Cousins in a second for Justin Herbert, I would do if people are vying in on Kirk Cousins being phenomenal in Atlanta. Not to say that he won't be phenomenal, but you get like 10 years of age back with Justin Herbert, who we know is like a known elite talent at the quarterback position. So might end up being a buy at this point, but I'll take the dub on Justin Herbert being a sell 2 weeks ago because he definitely lost value. Yam Baggy in the chat. Mooney and a 26th third or Kendrick Bourne and a 25 second. I'll take the 25 second on this one. It's the best piece in the deal. I like Darnell Mooney. I think he's going to be a fine wide receiver too, especially for Kirk Cousins now. But I think this is going to be Drake London and Kyle Pitts, and Bijan Robinson obviously is still there, of course, too. So if you can cash out on Darnell Mooney for a future second, I would much rather do that and hope to get somebody that either has more longevity or higher upside in like a single season or something like that in the 2025 class. And if that second edges anywhere closer to being like closer to the top of the second, closer to a first, then that's just more money in your pocket, I think. So yeah, I love that trade, getting a second. And then also, what's your take on Hollywood Brown? Do you think he will produce? Was hoping Kansas City would get T somehow, but Hollywood is also on our team with Mahomes, so that is good by me. Yeah, I love the Hollywood Brown signing with the Kansas City Chiefs. That was about as ideal of a situation as it could possibly get, outside of him either returning to Arizona or if he had somehow signed with the Chargers after they had traded away Keenan and cut Mike Williams. Those are probably the only really like elite upside options for Hollywood. But I love him in Kansas City. I think that I'm basically saying that he is like the MVS replacement, which might sound bad, but they don't have a field stretcher. Kelsey operates in the short to intermediate range. Rashee Rice had just a boatload of like bubble screens and slants and all that kind of stuff in the short to intermediate range. And they really didn't have a consistent option as a deep threat. So, I mean, if he's able to take over for the Justin Watson and MVS role, maybe even soaks up some of the Kadarius Toney stuff. I mean, those three combined last year had 120 targets. 130 targets between the three of them. So if and they weren't that efficient with them because obviously they're not good players. 130 targets, but it turned only into like 900 yards and 5 touchdowns. So you would be hoping for more from Hollywood if you were able to stay healthy and see that kind of a volume. So yeah, to me, I think if he gets 110, 120 targets from Patrick Mahomes and gets a decent number of deep shots with his talent, I think that he's going to be able to produce and be, a 1,000-yard wide receiver, catch a handful of touchdowns, and that's going to equate to like back end wide receiver 2 numbers. That's essentially what Calvin Ridley did last year, more or less. My camera keeps autofocusing. I don't know why it does that. Anyway, yeah, it's essentially going to be like what Calvin Ridley did, or a few other, wide receiver 2s, so to speak, in that range. That is kind of the upside that I would place on Hollywood. And the floor just being that he is more of like a wide receiver 3. But the good news is that if you had held on to Hollywood or traded for Hollywood, is that the price was really, really low. So that even if you're hanging on to him or bottom, and he is a wide receiver 3, that's not the worst thing in the world. Tyler Lockett last year was the wide receiver 34 and had 900 yards and 5 touchdowns. That's kind of the floor that I think I would put for Hollywood. Whereas if you look at, someone like D-Hop had 1,050 yards and 7 touchdowns, wide receiver 22. And there's Calvin Ridley right there with 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns, wide receiver 19. So that's kind of the upside that I think I would peg for Hollywood. Tanner, give Gibbs and Devonta Smith for Chase and Rashid Shaheed in a 1 quarterback half PPR 12 team start 9. Ooh. Oh man, this is a good one. I don't care about Rashid Shaheed. So this to me is Gibbs and Devonta Smith for Jamar Chase. I think I would take Chase in this one, but it would not take much more for me to say Gibbs and Devonta Smith. It's just I just prioritize the elite wide receiver more than I do the wide receiver 2 and the elite running back. So I would take Jamar Chase in this one. If you were to somehow make Shaheed be a better option, even if it was like a future second, like 25 or 26 second, or in my opinion, like a more upside kind of wide receiver, then that would definitely make me choose the Chase side. But as it stands right now, with basically Gibbs and Smith for Jamar Chase, I would take Jamar Chase. Where does Drake London now rank among other receivers in Dynasty? So I think I checked his keep trade cut ranking, went up to wide receiver 11, and that sounds about right to me. I think that he has now risen above. He was in that really weird, like 15 guys that all feel the same kind of wide receiver 2s in the NFL and for Dynasty. That like the T Higgins, the DK Metcalf types. Nico and Tank Dell were in that range as well too. I think on the higher end, Devonta Smith is in there. Maybe a Brandon Ayuk is in there. I think he's climbed above all of those guys strictly based on future outlook that he, as a player, Drake London has the ability to be an alpha wide receiver. Like he has the ability to get 150, 160 targets in a single season and do massively well with them, especially when they're coming from Kirk Cousins. So to me, he should be a back end wide receiver 1 in Dynasty. He's still wide receiver 11 on KTC. He's actually ahead of Tyreek Hill. That's just an age thing. London is still only 22 years old. That's insane. So he's like 8 years younger than Tyreek Hill. So I don't necessarily disagree with that one. But yeah, having him above Ayuk, Waddle, Nico, Devonta Smith, Michael Pittman, DJ Moore, especially now with Keenan Allen there, Rashee Rice, have him over Rome Odunze, putting him in that kind of Neighbors, Olave. You have Wilson in there as well too, and kind of that kind of Aaron Donald just retired. Wow. All right. So now we have more shakeups in the NFL. Aaron Donald just retired, but yeah, London back end wide receiver 1 above all those wide receiver 2s. And I think that he would, like, if you have Olave, I marked him as a sell in a video a couple weeks ago, the same one that I marked Justin Herbert as a sell. If you are somehow able to pivot off of Olave to Drake London plus, and that plus doesn't even really need to be anything significant. I'd be willing to do that as well. Same with maybe like AJ Brown for Drake London plus. And if you're able to move Ayuk or Waddle or Nico or anybody like that over to Drake London, then I would do that. Legend of Krakatoa, would you trade Jonathan Taylor for Trey McBride? I think I answered this on a comment yesterday. Let me see if I remember what I said, so I don't say don't go against myself. I want Jonathan Taylor in this, strictly because I think the value of a top 5 running back is greater than the value of a top 5 wide receiver. Now, the age argument does come into play here, and the career aspect does come into play of an elite running back timeline versus an elite tight end timeline, especially at where both of them are in their careers right now. But I would still value Jonathan Taylor over Trey McBride, but it would not take a whole lot for me to move over to McBride here. In our February ADP, because we don't have March up yet, because February ADP took so long because we wait for MFL to roll over. Jonathan Taylor is at 17 overall. This is in one quarterback. He's at 17 overall, and Trey McBride is at 41 overall. So that is essentially a round and a half of ADP difference in one quarterback leagues. So that backs up my opinion of taking JT over McBride, ADP wise as well too. What's up, Antonio? And thank you for being a member as well too. Should I be looking to sell on Swift as my current RB2? If so, what are some pivot options off the top of the head? I am actually in the bucket. I feel like a lot of people really like DeAndre Swift to Chicago, and I do not. And something has to break here. Either DeAndre Swift, who's been a known receiving running back for a while, who succeeded as a receiving back in Detroit and in Philly last year. Either he's coming in and is going to break the mold of throwing to Chicago running backs. And with Shane Waldron coming in now, he did not throw a whole lot to the running back position in Seattle as well too. So there's something that has to give between the two. And maybe they just kind of meet in the middle. This is kind of the same thing that I was talking about with Justin Herbert, where, the Chargers were just so high pass volume and Harbaugh is so little pass volume that something has to give there. And maybe that ultimate result ends up being kind of a compromise in the middle to where it's lower than where we are kind of used to with that player's high production based on a lot of high volume. So I'm kind of out on Swift. I feel like if you asked Justin, he would say something opposite. Maybe that's the Chicago Bears fandom in him, or maybe he just truly believes in Swift like that. If you wanted to try to pivot him over to another running back, like I really like Javonte Williams, I would be trying to pivot over to him. I would try to pivot over to Josh Jacobs. I'm not sure if you can do that or not. You might have to add like a later second or something, or maybe a 25 second to do that. I'd be willing to do that personally for Josh Jacobs. I don't think you need to do that for Javonte. But if you had some throw in piece or something like that, that is more than a dart throw third, but is not really somebody that you want to hold on to for a second, like a Darnell Mooney kind of player. Maybe that kind of gets you from Swift to Javonte. I would also trade Swift probably for any first round pick is an auto sell. And I would probably also take like an early second to try to get into a position where I can re-roll on a rookie this year. Whether that's, Trey Benson or Jonathan Brooks, or maybe you luck out and you get like Braylon Allen. Like me personally, if Braylon Allen goes to a really good landing spot on day 2, he's going to be a first round pick for me. He might not be for a lot of other people. So if you can kind of position yourself in your league to get Braylon Allen, I would absolutely love that as well too. I'm not totally opposed to using Swift to go down to Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones, or James Conner as well too. You just got to get something meaningful on the back end, like a young wide receiver or maybe a tight end or something like that is going to produce for you. Where is Swift? Is in there at 78. So if you scroll down a little bit, can you get like Dontavian Wicks would do it for me, or maybe like another second rounder that you can turn into a rookie wide receiver in this class. Hollywood would be fun. I don't think you can do that. And Josh Downs might do it. If you could trade Swift for like Josh Downs and Mixon, I'm not opposed to that. For the trade down to get a better shot at a wide receiver or something like that. Options for you. Hopefully that helped, Antonio. Thank you. Andrew has the 105, but doesn't need a quarterback in a 10-team Superflex, half PPR, half tight end premium. How many of these guys would you take over Drake May at the 105? London, Waddle, McBride, JT, Ayuk, Olave. I would take JT. I would take London. I would take Ayuk. Value-wise, it's probably value-wise, you could probably say Olave and maybe Waddle as well too. And then with the tight end premium, I would also take McBride over the 1.05. So I guess all of them. Ideally, I would love to do this for JT or London or McBride. Those are kind of like my three targets there with that 1.05. I would still do it for Ayuk as well too. I don't love doing it for Olave and Waddle, but I think value-wise it makes sense. And then I would probably look to move them in a different trade. So that's kind of how I view it. Although at 1.05, are you assuming that Neighbors isn't going to be there? Because what if Neighbors is there? I would take Neighbors over Waddle and Olave, especially if he's a Charger. Maybe you're assuming Neighbors isn't going to be there if he is a Charger. So there's that nuance as well too. But as it stands right now, just strictly the 1.05, I would take most of those guys over him. Neighbors is your guy, but he's gone before my pick if he's a Charger. Yeah, probably. I think that's probably a good expectation that he's probably a top 4 pick. Especially if Drake May is the one who goes to New England or something like that. So, yeah. I'm going to bounce down. William asked about Swift. We were just talking about Swift. I'll go back up to the top, so I'm not skipping any questions, but this just coincided with what we were talking about with Swift. Curious how the Bears want to use him with all the other running backs they got there. I think he ultimately ends up being what he was in Detroit, where they have maybe not like the final season where Jamal Williams got like 280 carries and Swift just kind of got the rest. But I'm talking like where Swift is basically more of like the 1A with more of the receiving option. And then they have Khalil Herbert, who I would assume people are saying that they're going to cut Khalil Herbert. And I don't really think that makes sense. They only save like $500,000 at that price. I don't know why you wouldn't just keep Khalil Herbert as a depth piece in case DeAndre Swift gets back. He's already very well acclimated into that offense. And to me, I just view Khalil Herbert as like a 110, 125 carry running back. And then Swift probably gets like 160 and maybe like 50 to 60 targets is probably where I would put DeAndre Swift. I think that this kills Roschon. So if you had Roschon and we're hoping for something, I think he's the odd man out here, unless Swift were to get hurt, which is not out of the range of possibilities. So that's kind of how I view the usage for Swift and why I'm kind of down on him. Antonio, along with that, are there any players on new teams that you think got a legit boost in their production projections as a result? The funny part about a lot of the running backs is that they just moved to other teams that needed running backs. Like Joe Mixon's situation didn't really change. Derrick Henry's situation, albeit he went to a better team, but like he was already a 300 touch or 320 touch workhorse running back. Maybe his touchdowns go up, but he was also a double-digit touchdown guy in Tennessee anyway. So there's that. Josh Jacobs went from an ideal situation to an ideal situation in terms of volume. So I don't really think his production really increases drastically because of that. Maybe it's the touchdown thing again, which was the issue last year in Vegas. He didn't score touchdowns. So that's why, even though he was killing it on the ground, his fantasy totals weren't all that great. So maybe that helps. Aaron Jones went from over to Minnesota, and assuming that he's the starting running back, I don't really think that changes anything either. Tony Pollard probably got hurt. Tyjae Spears probably got hurt. Calvin Ridley got hurt as well too, just to stay in Tennessee. I don't really view anybody that got a boost based on moving teams. Keenan Allen, I think, got hurt. The only people that I think got boosted were the Falcons players, London and Pitts. And that's really it, I think. Everybody else just kind of stayed status quo or maybe took a little bit of a hit. Will Levis, I think, got a bump because he got Ridley and Tony Pollard, who's better at pass catching running back than Derrick Henry. So Levis got a bump, I think. Hollywood, maybe, just because he's gone to Patrick Mahomes. But we've been hoping for wide receivers to go to Patrick Mahomes, and then they don't succeed all that much anyway. But I'm a Hollywood truther and believer, so I believe that maybe he could be an increased in production in Kansas City. But that's basically it. It was really weird just because everybody moved, but they moved kind of laterally. Legend of Krakatoa, what are your thoughts on Christian Watson for the future? I've never liked Christian Watson, and there's nothing that I've seen that makes me change my mind. Sell for a second. Honestly, I'd probably take a couple of thirds as well, too. He is arguably the fourth worst receiver on that team. I'll give you third. He's better than Dobbs, but I think that he is at best the third best wide receiver on that team. So, James, what are your thoughts on a 10-team, 2-quarterback league putting a max of 4 quarterbacks rostered? Should a league ever set a max rostered for a position? No, that is stupid. This is something that makes me like not join a league or makes me want to leave a league. I get the whole 10-team thing. So that's technically like 40 quarterbacks being rostered. But it's a 2 QB league. So you are mandating, it's not the same as Superflex where if you didn't have 2 quarterbacks, you could play somebody else. But you are mandating every team start 2 quarterbacks every single week. So then if everybody has a third one as a backup, and then like, I don't like putting a max on any position. I think that's stupid in Dynasty. I think it's stupid in redraft too, but especially in Dynasty, like let's just let people build their team how they want. And this is kind of something that I think inhibits movement. Because I've talked to a few people that like have DM'd me about like asking for trade advice, and they're like, "Hey, should I make this deal? I can only keep 3 quarterbacks or 4 quarterbacks in this case, and so I got to trade one, or I can't trade this one and take on another one, or he can't take on this other one." It's stupid. It's so dumb, and it inhibits activity. And those are leagues that I do not want to be in. Cole, speaking of Ridley, where do you have him ranked with the Titans? I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed either. Will Levis is a downgrade from both Matt Ryan and Trevor Lawrence. He is 30 years old. I just don't really know what to expect from Calvin Ridley. Like, I'm kind of out on him. If you can move him over to Mike Evans, I would do that. If you can move him over to George Pickens, I would do that. If you can move him to Devontae Adams or Stephon Diggs or even Cooper Kupp, I would be willing to do all of that stuff for Calvin Ridley. So that's like just right there. That's dropping him down into the, where was he? He was already wide receiver 42 in ADP. So I don't really think that helps him. I would take Keenan Allen over him, who just went to a different team as well too, and is basically kind of ish the same age. They're both over 30, so it is what it is. I'm just not. I don't know what to do with Ridley, so I don't want him. I would trade him for Christian Kirk if you can still do that, because now Christian Kirk is the wide receiver 1 in Jacksonville, even if they draft somebody. So, yeah, that was weird. I didn't like that. Where do you see Mike Williams going? Honestly, I still think that he has a outside shot of landing in Kansas City. They still need like a big bodied kind of guy. They got Kelsey and Rashee Rice to operate in kind of the same range. They got their vertical guy in Hollywood. And if they can sign Mike Williams to like a really cheap deal, not like Julio Jones on the Eagles cheap, but just like give him like $7 or $8 million or something like that. And just kind of be like a touchdown guy, I think that Kansas City still makes sense for him. I think Vegas makes sense for him as well too. I think Carolina also makes sense for him. Um, Even a team like Houston, honestly, would make sense for Mike Williams as an older veteran, a big bodied guy that can be a red zone threat for your developing still and up and coming young good quarterback. Jacksonville is another one as well too. Basically, he would basically play the Marvin Jones role from 2 years ago, or maybe not the Calvin Ridley role, kind of, so to speak. Um, there's a handful of teams that he can go to where he can both be competitive and compete for a Super Bowl, but also still make a mark for fantasy and in the NFL. So I'm interested to see where he signs. I think he's definitely the best available free agent right now. So I'm definitely I would throw a dart if somebody's looking to get rid of him, like toss like a fourth for him or even a third and just see what happens. I'd be willing to do that. Brandon, would you trade the 110 and 111 for 107 and 207 in a 12-team Superflex start 10? Yes, I would, because the 110 and 111 are a really weird range right now of a bunch of wide receivers that I don't like. I just talked about Keon Coleman, Xavier Worthy, and Lad McConkey. They all seem to be kind of ish in that range right now, depending on draft capital. I don't think you're getting Brian Thomas Jr. at the 110. But it does feel like you're like getting into the 107 is great. And I love that because you're getting either Odunze or Bowers with that pick. And I want that over 2 shots at the wide receiver. But I feel like the 207 should be something slightly better. I don't know what that is. Or maybe if you can snag like another future second, then that would give me a lot more confidence in this trade. But as it stands right now, I would take the 1.07 just to be able to get up into that range and get Bowers or Odunze. How do I pivot off of Christian Kirk? You're pretty confident that the Jags are going to land Ayuk. Ooh, that would be interesting. I mean, Kirk is kind of somebody that I want to hold on to, but if you're looking at options to move off of him, the wide receivers in this range are really, really weird. Could you do Hollywood or move up to get, or like Jaden Reed? I don't know if you can get Jaden Reed. I would love to see if you can turn like Kirk and a similar wide receiver, like an early second, and go up and get like George Pickens or somebody like that. Or maybe like Jordan Addison if somebody's really worried about them not having a quarterback right now. Or even going and getting a Devontae Adams or a Stephon Diggs, you know, if you're contending an older wide receiver that is still going to be productive, I'm not out on that either. Kirk is like a really weird player though, because value-wise for Dynasty, because I feel like people just don't really want him. So if you have him, I feel like you're kind of stuck. It is really weird. He's 73. I'm just looking at ADP. He's in the Tony Pollard and DeAndre Swift range. That might not be bad. Javonte would be another one if you can get Javonte. Or kind of do something similar like what I was saying with selling Swift down for Mixon or Aaron Jones or James Conner. You could do that as well too. Braylon Allen is the RB4 in February ADP. That is mad disrespectful. So I think there's some options there that you can kind of move laterally, but if you can move up, that would be great too by adding something to them. You kind of got to add something pretty shiny, or like a higher second or a later first. And I think that you're able to land something really, really good, whether that's a better running back or a better wide receiver or a rookie or something like that too would work. Benjamin has a contending team who has DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. Should I look to move one of them or ride it out? I think this hurts both of them. I mean, it has to hurt both of them, even with Caleb Williams coming in. Just the fact that they both thrived on the fact that they saw like 150 or 160 targets last year. And the way that the Bears target shares broke down last year. I mean, This absolutely hurts Cole Kmet as well too. But like DJ Moore had 136 targets. The next closest was Cole Kmet at 90, and Darnell Mooney had 60. And with Swift getting in here too, like if Swift takes over Roshan's, 40 to 50 targets, or even Mooney's 60 targets, the target share is really, really weird. I don't know. I would love to move off of Keenan Allen. I don't know what you're going to be able to get for him because I feel like most people see this as a downgrade. DJ Moore might be somebody that you might be able to move off of for something more significant. Like if you're able to move him for a Tank Dell or a DK Metcalf or a T Higgins, or maybe bump up and get an Ayuk or a Pitman or London, somebody like that. That might be better for you with DJ Moore, and then take the shot that Keenan Allen maybe not is like the wide receiver one. I don't think he's beating out DJ Moore, but like Keenan Allen is more productive than people might think. And because his price is so low, it kind of really doesn't make sense to get rid of him. Unless you can move him for, like, if you take the shot on, like, I don't know, Cortland Sutton doesn't sound great for me to trade away Keenan Allen for. Neither does like Jeudy or Dobbs or even like Jacoby Myers. Yeah, it's weird to trade away Keenan, and I don't want like a third. So I don't know. DJ Moore might be the better option. I would try to see if you can pivot off of Moore to a different wide receiver. Then you're not all in on this Bears offense with a rookie quarterback, albeit Caleb Williams, but still rookie quarterback. You've been trying to 1-for-1 between DJ Moore and London. You've been offered Rice for DJ Moore straight up. Ooh, Rice would be interesting. I think I'd probably do that. I would prefer Drake London though over Rashee Rice if you can still manage to get that. So like if you leave the Rice deal on the table, then fall back on that if everything else falls out. But I would pivot over to Rashee Rice. I'm not against that one. Am I missing anything down here? You're in a home league, but it's 10 years and you hate the rule, but everybody else is against changing it. That's so stupid. Yeah, you can't really leave a home league. Those are fun. And if it's with your friends and everything like that, you just kind of got to go with it. I'm in a home dynasty league where we have kickers and defenses, and I've been asking to get rid of them for a while, and nobody really wants to. So I feel you on that one, on rule changes and people being against it. I will say though that at least 4 quarterbacks in a 10-team league, that does give you a little bit more headroom. I still don't like it, but I've seen them where the restriction is at 3. So at least 4 gives you a little bit more headroom to where you're able to have 3 starters and maybe like a project quarterback or like a Gardner Minshew type of backup. So that's not terrible. I just don't like it though. Just don't like restrictions. Caleb in a 12-team Superflex PPR start 10 has Mahomes, Stafford, Rodgers at quarterback, Olave, Waddle, T, Higgins, Puka at wide receiver. Holy crap. 102, 104 as well. Is it crazy to take Harrison and Neighbors instead of one of the top quarterbacks? You're assuming that Marvin Harrison is there at 1.02. If Harrison is there at 102, you have to take him. If Harrison is not there, I think you have to take Caleb. I think it'd be crazy not to take Caleb Williams at 1.02. If he is going to the Bears and he's throwing to DJ Moore, Keenan, and DeAndre Swift. This is like the best situation that a rookie quarterback has ever been put in ever, let alone a number 1 overall rookie quarterback. So I think you've got to take Caleb Williams at the 1.02 if Marvin Harrison Jr. goes 101. But I would take Harrison if Caleb goes 101. So that's 102. Now with the 1.04, I'm not against taking Neighbors as well too, especially if he does land with the Chargers. So I don't mind taking Harrison and Neighbors there as well. With both of those picks, assuming that you're not avoiding Caleb Williams. I didn't word that very well. But I think that those decisions might end up being made for you. Like I said, if Caleb goes 101, you take Marvin Harrison. And then if Jaden Daniels goes 103, then Malik Neighbors is a Charger. I would take Malik Neighbors there too. So I don't think it's crazy. But if Marvin goes 101, I would take Caleb 102. Yeah. Hopefully that made sense. um, Colin has the 101 104 planning on taking Marvin and Neighbors. Would you trade Hawk? This is like the same two picks almost. Would you trade Hawk in the 25 second for 1.06 and Muth with the chance that Bowers is there at pick 6? 2 and 3 are quarterback. Pick 5 could be anything. Yes, I would. I would trade Hawk and a second for 1.06. I would do that even if it was Romo Dunze as well too. I would do that even if it ended up being like Drake May for some reason, or Jaden Daniels. Um, so if you're Marvin goes 101, 2 and 3 are Caleb and Daniels, then you take Neighbors at 104. 105 is either May, Odunze, or Bowers, and then you get one of the other two. I'm totally fine trading Hawk in 25 second for that. So yeah, that's great. If Pitt's a top 4 dynasty tight end with Kirk Cousins? I would love to say that he is. I feel like I can't put him there until I actually see it. But with Hockenson's injury, I definitely think it makes more of an argument for Kyle Pitts to be top 4. Because you got Laporta and McBride, and then Bowers are probably the consensus top 3. Those would be my top 3. And then for number 4, it would be Hawk, Pitts, or Andrews. I think as of right now, I would probably have Andrews at 4, Pitts at 5, Hawk at 6. I should probably. I think I've been contemplating like actually doing rankings for a while now, but I think that's how I would do it. They're all kind of in that group. Like I think the top 3 that I just mentioned are in their own tier, and then I think this next 3 are in their own tier as well too. So I don't really have a problem with anybody ordering it any one way or another. But this is absolutely amazing news for Kyle Pitts getting Kirk Cousins, and I do think that he has the potential to climb into that top 3, if not even return to be tight end 1 overall, if he kind of does what Sam Laporta does, or does what TJ Hockenson was doing in Minnesota with Kirk Cousins. Then Kyle Pitts could just jump right back up to tight end 1 where he was basically up until like last year. He's the same age as Sam Laporta, and he's a year younger than Trey McBride. Kyle Pitts. So like the age argument it's still there for Kyle Pitts. It's insane. So yeah. I don't know if I don't think I put him at 4, but he's in that tier to be with pick 4 or be tight end 4, essentially. J-Dub, 10-team 1 quarterback, move the 202 and Jeudy for Ekeler, plenty of wide receiver depth, and the first and the first 3 picks, but only had Hall, Bijan, Najee, and Warren at running back, so I needed the depth. Good move or an overpay? I think it's a slight overpay. I think I would not. It is a 1 quarterback, but it's 10 teams, so it's essentially like the 112 and a 1 quarterback, which is I think that still puts you in the range for a running back anyway. Like that could have been Benson or Braylon Allen or Jonathan Brooks. And I think I'd rather have that opportunity to take a rookie running back than Ekeler. I disregarded having Jeudy in here, but I feel like Jeudy isn't like a nothing throw-in. If people believe that he could do something in Cleveland. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'd rather have the 202 in this one. John is in the chat. What's up, John? John's going to answer all these questions before I get to them as well, too. He's like a mod in my chat section right now. Like if I was streaming on Twitch. All right, hold on. Vinny, hopefully I didn't miss this. Where are we at with Quentin Johnston now with all the Chargers moves? Do I trade him for the 2.03? Abso-freaking-lutely. This is the biggest Quentin Johnston trade window, sell window that will ever come available, because people are going to talk themselves into him being the wide receiver 1 and him having the breakout wide receiver 2 or breakout like second year wide receiver season. Quentin Johnston's not it. There are multiple times on film last year that he is just not it. And this is absolutely a massive, massive sell window. The fact that you can get a second round pick, let alone the 2.03, is insane for Quentin Johnston. So please Please sell Quentin Johnston. Artie, thoughts on Bowers' health concerns considering he's not participating in pro day with a hamstring injury? He has his pro day in April, I think. Yeah, it wasn't like the scheduled Georgia pro day, but I think they bumped it back to April. So I'm not all that concerned about it. If it comes out that, he has to push that back again, or he's not going to participate at all before the NFL draft, then maybe there's a little bit of a concern because those hamstring injuries are kind of annoying and they linger. But from like a complete dynasty landscape, I don't really have any concerns with the hamstring injury. I just hope that it doesn't linger into the season. That's essentially where I'm at. But if it does linger into the season, if that creates a buy opportunity for him, a bunch of people deal with hamstring injuries in a random year and then they go right back to where they were or break out the following year. So from a dynasty landscape, I'm not all that concerned. And if he does actually participate at his pro day later in April, then that alleviates a lot of those concerns as well too. And the NFL will tell us if they're concerned or not by him being a top 8 pick, essentially. A 12, I think, is what I think the NFL circles say they don't believe that he's going to make it past pick 12 because they got Tennessee's in there, the Jets are in there. There's a couple other teams that were interested in Bowers in that top 12 range. William, thoughts on Pickens? He seems to be very polarizing in the dynasty community. I'm relatively high on his ceiling this year. Yeah, he rose a lot from not like a lot, but like my confidence in him definitely has risen with the Deontay Johnson trading. I posted a series of polls on Twitter, basically getting like a dynasty value check on him immediately after the Deontay Johnson news. Let me see if I can find all those again. I got to wade through all these notifications from my Justin Herbert trade tweet. So I basically put him up. I went on Keep Trade Cut and Pickens was like wide receiver 28 or something like that. So I basically compared 1v1 Pickens versus a bunch of wide receivers all the way up to like the wide receiver 12 on Keep Trade Cut to see if people had Pickens above any of them. And he lost every single poll, most by a decent margin as well too, like 70-30, 80-20. We got a couple 90-10s in there. But he lost every single poll except for Pickens versus Jordan Addison. 53% of people that voted out of over 300 votes preferred Pickens over Addison. But and the next closest was Flowers, and Pickens was basically a 50-50 pick. But Higgins beat him 70-30. Metcalf beat him 65-35. Odunze beat him 60-40. DJ Moore beat him. This was like a few days ago. But I'm sure most people will still take DJ Moore. That was 70-30. Tank Dell 60-40. Devonta Smith 70-30. Pittman 80-20. Nico 70-30. Waddle 80-20. Like his dynasty value did not climb because of Deontay being traded, and now he's a wide receiver 1. And I don't know if that's because of Arthur Smith or Russell Wilson, maybe some combination of both. Yeah, and Keep Trade Cut, he's still the wide receiver 27 in the same tier with JSN, right behind Zay Flowers, which that's insane to me. I would take George Pickens over JSN. I would take him over Zay Flowers. I would take him over Jordan Addison. I don't think I would take him over any of the other wide receivers, but he's definitely a buy. Like he's definitely a player that if you have a Stephon Diggs and you can move him for George Pickens, I'd do that. If you have Jayden Reed, you can move him for Pickens, I'd do that. Debo, Evans, Christian Watson is apparently in here. I just talked about him. He's wide receiver 34. Add a second to Watson, go get Pickens. I'm in. Kupp in a second, Ridley in a second, Amari in a second. His upside is certainly insane, especially with Russell Wilson, who made Cortland Sutton, gave Cortland Sutton the best wide receiver season he's had in almost his entire career. And we're not that far removed. I know Arthur Smith sucked in Atlanta, but like we're still not that far removed from when he was an offensive coordinator in Tennessee doing things for AJ Brown. Like maybe he's just one of those guys that is just a better coordinator than he is head coach. And, he wasn't able to do his offensive play calling duties as well because he was also doing head coaching duties and it was just too much on his plate. So now just give him the chance to call plays. And, Pickens, as of right now, is the best talent on that offense by far. Their wide receiver 2 is Calvin Austin. I'm sure they add somebody, but, I would be buying George Pickens right now, especially at these prices that he's still going at. I'm buying George Pickens. I think he's an easy 1,100-yard receiver with a chance for 5 to 8 touchdowns, and that puts him right back into that range with, the what we were talking about with where Hollywood's upside was as a back end wide receiver 2. And if he's more consistent on a weekly basis because he is the only target as of right now without Deontay there, I'm in. What tight ends do you think are undervalued heading into this year? Evan Ingram. There you go. That's your easy answer. Evan Ingram. Njoku might be slightly undervalued. Jake Ferguson, I think, is still undervalued. Dalton Schultz is undervalued as well, too. Jatavian Sanders, depending on where he lands, I think is undervalued in the mid to late second of rookie drafts. He might not stay there if he goes to a good landing spot, but if he has like a semi-decent landing spot and that's still his ADP, I'd be interested in him too. If you want cheaper, Dulcich is a good option, I think. They got rid of Jeudy. And so I think he's a better player to buy in the Broncos offense than Marvin Mims. So you can go get Greg Dulcich. Michael Mayer, not a bad player to try to toss out a third round pick for if you can get that. Tucker Kraft as well too. There's options there, but yeah, Evan Ingram is the one and only answer because people just do not care about Evan Ingram. What's the rookie pick difference between Lamar and Justin Herbert? If you are selling Lamar for Herbert, I want a late first. I know that might sound insane, but I want a late first, like 110 to 112. If you are going from Herbert to Lamar, as in buying Lamar, if you could do that for a second round pick, I would absolutely do that. Multiple seconds, I would do that. I would be willing to pay a late first, that like a pick that turns into Xavier Worthy or Keon Coleman or somebody like that. I'd be willing to make that move. I don't know if you necessarily have to. Maybe you do now because of the fact he doesn't have any wide receivers. That's kind of the difference that I see between the two of them as of right now. And I want to make this deal to go up and get Lamar. Holy crap, it's 12:50 already. All right, we got to run through these. Got to run through them. Inbox offer, 12-team start. Is that 12 by 10? 12 teams start 10. That's an interesting way to do that. I actually really like that. Anyway, sorry. Give Waddle and a 25 first from a playoff team. Get the 1.04. Looking to draft a quarterback. Yeah, I would do this for sure. If you're able to get Jaden Daniels there, I would do that for sure. Honestly, this isn't necessarily like a bad move, even if you end up landing like Malik Neighbors. I know you want a quarterback, but yeah, if you're able to get Daniels and even Drake May for this deal, I would do that for the 1.04. If you can snag anything else on top, like just counter if he has something fun that people are not gonna, you're not gonna say no that a deal gets done if you add in that guy. Then you could try to do that, but I think as it stands right now, I'll take the 104. 1 second. Wes in a 12-team Superflex PPR with 1 tight end premium. So is that's a 2 PPR tight end premium? Okay, that's insane. I'm rebuilding after going all in last year. Have traded away a few assets already, so I'm going to suck. Trade Cousins, London, and Zamir White for the 104, 2.03, and your 25. Oh, you're getting, yeah, if you're rebuilding and you're getting your 2025 first back, you need to be able to do that. Basically, I think you can kind of wash Cousins in the 203. London for the 104, I think makes sense because that could be like Malik Neighbors or a quarterback. So I think that makes sense. And 25 first, absolutely over to Zamir White and carries over any extra value that you might have lost from Cousins in the 203. So I would absolutely do this for the 2 first and the 203. Secure your 2025 first in a rebuild that allows you to go as deep as you want to, so then you can solidify that 1.01 next year. And you get a couple other great assets as well too on top of it. So yeah, I really, really like this. Get the 104 and the 25 first. What's the lowest you take for Fields right now, pick wise, or do you hold if he's your QB3? I want out on Justin Fields. I've gotten DMs on from people that say that they're like, hey, should I sell Fields for Michael Pittman? Should I sell Fields for Devonta Smith? To which I say, absolutely. If you're able to get any of that, that's insane. Pick wise, if you're able to get a first, smash any first, 24, 25, 26, I'm out. I would take a high second as well too. I don't necessarily want to, but I feel like most people, if they are still in on Fields and believe that he still has the potential to be a starter in the NFL, and ergo, if he's a starter, he's going to have top 10 fantasy upside. If you're able to pull away a 25 or 26 first, I would absolutely love that. I still take a high second, like 201 to 203. I'd probably still take. But based on some of the DMs that I've got with questions about Fields and his trade value and offers that they've gotten for Fields, you might be able to get. You should probably be able to get a first, or maybe a player that's not a first but is equal to a first. You know what I'm saying? Pandas eat rice. I like that name. What's a good amount of draft compensation to realistically get Trevor Lawrence? So you need to give up, I think, a high first and maybe a high and a late first. I think would do it. Basically, allows them to hit the reset button on Daniels or Drake May. It doesn't need to necessarily be Daniels, but if you have like 104, 105, 106, and then you add in another late second or maybe like a 2025 or not late second, late first or a 2025 first, I think that could realistically get done for Trevor. And that's a trade that I'd be willing to do for Trevor as well too. Anything under that is for sure. Like if you end up trading like the 105 in a second for Trevor Lawrence or 105 in 2 seconds for Trevor Lawrence, then that's a smash for sure. Thoughts on trading AJ Brown away for the 101 to take Caleb Williams? I'm taking the 101. Yeah, take Caleb Williams there. And if for some reason you end up taking Marvin Harrison Jr. as well too, I would take Marvin Harrison Jr. over AJ Brown. So yeah, I'll take the 101. Spiked Mocha, 12-team, one quarterback. I own 101, 102, 103, 108, 202. Quarterback is Fields, looking to buy a vet or use 108 on best available. Or both. Can you trade Fields for like a Goff type veteran or Aaron Rodgers or Stafford or Baker? Honestly, even if you're able to trade Fields for like Russ and a third, I would consider that as well too. So then you have a starting quarterback at your quarterback slot in one QB. And then, I don't think Caleb makes it to 108, even in a one quarterback league. But if you end up taking Caleb there at the 108, then that could be cool. 202 might end up being, maybe you get Jaden Daniels at the 202. So then you got the rushing upside to go with that as well. It kind of hits the reset button on Fields at the 202. And then you have another vet that you can, kind of stream multiple weeks or start the vet until Daniels kind of gets his legs under him. Pun intended? No pun intended? Yeah. So you have so with these picks then, I would give all of those picks except for the 102. If you can trade 108, 202, 205, I don't think that gets done for Lawrence. It might. Because the 108 still puts you into that. I consider JJ McCarthy as a part of that top 8 tier now. So you might be able to persuade them to take on McCarthy. Or if you do the 108 and your 25 first next year, and if you got to toss in that 205, then go for it too. I think you got the ammo here to buy Lawrence. I would not use the 102 though. I would not. I wouldn't use Caleb. Caleb and Trevor Lawrence are basically neck and neck in rankings. And Marvin Harrison's up there as well too. So if you're able to use those other 3 picks or your 25 first next year in conjunction with one of these picks, then I would do that for Trevor. Yeah. Kevin, 12 team super flex. Looking to trade up from the 104 to the 103 as I think my league may go QB and I can get MHJ. Wow. That'd be crazy. Would you trade the 104, 205, and a third for the 103 and 211? Yeah. This feels, from the 103's point of view, I guess you just get a this feels like not, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Sorry. But yeah, I would absolutely do this. This feels like a very easy win for you to be. If it is Marvin Harrison Jr. at the 103, that's insane. Or if you're able to basically just say I'm taking Jaden Daniels at the 103, then that's fine too. This feels like enough for me to risk the possibility that 103 could be Marvin Harrison Jr. I'd take that. Jay, in an 8-man, 18 PPR non-super flex, trade away AJ Brown, Deontay Johnson, received Jamar Chase, JSN, James Cooks, Tyjae Spears. Oh my God. Yes, that is a phenomenal W. Chase over AJ Brown for sure. And then I would take JSN over Deontay, and you got a free James Cook and Tyjae Spears. Yes, Sawyer says that you committed highway robbery. That is insane. Mike Gesicki, question mark? Was this in relation to something? Maybe I said like a throw-in or something. I don't like Mike Gesicki in Cincy. You pulled that in week 8 last year. Turned out to be pretty good. Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say so. Way to go. Mahomes, the 106 and the 112, or Stroud, the 104 and the 111. Ooh. Give me Mahomes here. Mahomes and like the 111, 112, I don't necessarily care about. Just scratch them off. They're basically the same pick. And I would take a 2-pick drop from 104 to 106. You're still in the same tier for me to go from Stroud to Mahomes because it's Mahomes. So, yeah, I'll take Mahomes in the 106 and the 112. You also traded away Hurts for Burrow and what turned out to be the 105. You think that's a little bit more even? No, I disagree. I think that's insane. Because as of right now, Hurts and Burrow are basically in the same tier. People are really, really down on Jalen Hurts. I don't necessarily believe that to be the case. I would still take Hurts over Burrow, but the 105 is not the difference at all. And is this in the non-super? This is in one quarterback league, so the 1.05 is far and away the best asset in this deal. Yeah, that's crazy. John with his question: give DJ Moore in the 208, get the 1.05 in a 10 by 11. Is this the new thing? Instead of an S, like 10 teams start 11, it's 10 by 11. I really like this. I'm in on this. Superflex, half PPR, 1.5 tight end premium. Give DJ Moore. Yeah, I would take the 1.05 here. I think you have more flexibility with that pick, John. I feel like you know the same that was the same thing for you as well too. So you have more flexibility there. So if that ends up being Neighbors, you just traded DJ Moore in a late second for Neighbors. And if he's on the Chargers, then that's even better. But if it's Daniels, if it's May, then I'm in on it. Yeah, I would take the 105. Own the 103 in a 12-team super flex, no PPR. Draft Marvin Harrison Jr. if he falls, or draft a quarterback. Marvin. Can't trade 1 and 3 plus Fields for an elite QB. 1 and 2, 1 and 4 won't trade. If Marvin's there, the 103, you take Marvin. He's absolutely best available. Because then that would assume that 1 and 2 went quarterback. So it would be basically, in my opinion, I think that's Marvin versus May, and I would take Marvin. I'm taking Marvin over Jaden Daniels anyway. But if you assume that 2 quarterbacks go ahead of you, I'm taking Marvin. Yeah. Can't trade Fields for Goff, Baker. Yeah. I that's why I want those quarterbacks. And so I understand why, if you had them and somebody offered you Fields for them, I understand why you would say no. Appreciate the insight. Keep doing what you do, boss. Thank you. Thank you, Pandas Eat Rice. I love that name so much. Would you keep Rashee Rice or Zamir White? Both cost a last rounder. I would keep Rice. Even if Zamir White somehow survived the draft, I would keep Rashee Rice. Yeah, the draft could make that easy for you. Yeah. Who's a buy low and a sell high? I have videos on both of these that have come out recently. The buy ones had 11 players in it. The sell one had 6. If I had to offer up other names, I think a buy low right now is George Pickens. We kind of mentioned it. I think is a solid. I don't know if that's like a low, considered like buy low. But I like his value because it hasn't seemed to have risen based on Deontay's trade. Amari Cooper, I think, is a good buy low with Jerry Jeudy there. Tony Pollard, honestly, I think is a solid buy low. If people think that he is not the workhorse there, I still think that he has the ability to be the workhorse. He's actually behind Tyjae Spears in ADP. I think Pollard's a good buy low. Always Aaron Jones, always James Conner. And then as for a sell high, Olave and Kyron were in my video. Those are like easy names for me. Sorry, I'm looking at ADP trying to see if I can come up with anybody else. Sam Laporta might be a buy or a sell high. Not in the sense that I think he's bad or the sense that he shouldn't continue doing what he does, but most people seem to believe that he is the clear-cut tight end 1, and I think that he is in a tier with McBride and Bowers, let alone Andrews and Pitts. So if you're able to take Sam Laporta, sell him high for another tight end, drop down to a Pitts or an Andrews and get something great on top of that too, then I think that that's a good thing to do with Sam Laporta right now. In February ADP, he's being valued right around like Nico and Jonathan Taylor. So if you're able to trade Sam Laporta for Jonathan Taylor, I would take Jonathan Taylor. So there's maybe another sell high. 12 team Superflex start 9, have the 101, 104 in the first round. In my quarterback room, I have Herbert, Young, and Levis. With Young and Levis' situations getting better, how do you feel about taking Marvin Harrison Jr. at 1? I would still take Caleb Williams. I am kind of out on Bryce Young. Levis is just kind of there. I do agree that his situation definitely got better, but there's a lot of uncertainty with both Young and Levis. And now with Herbert taking a hit as well too, and even if they add another wide receiver, I don't think his volume is going to necessarily be there. I think when you have an opportunity, if Caleb Williams goes to the Bears, if you have an opportunity to take a quarterback that is going to a quarterback coming in with as much hype and talent as Caleb Williams, and then you give him DJ Moore and Keenan Allen and DeAndre Swift and Cole Kmet, I don't know how you don't just take Caleb Williams at the 1.01. If he is a Chicago Bear, I think he is like, I don't really think that there is a debate between him and Marvin Harrison Jr. I think it is Caleb Williams at 101. So if this was me and I had your team with your quarterbacks, I would take Caleb 101. Assuming he's a Bear. In a 12-team, 1 quarterback league as reigning champion, congratulations, PM, on the championship. Have the 304 and 312. What quarterback could I get if I offer Fields Wilson, and both of your third round picks. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to go to the analyzer. One quarterback values are so weird to me. Let's see. Fields, Russell Wilson, and it was 3, 4, and 312. So that's all coming out as 341 points in the analyzer. If we look at quarterbacks aroundish that point, you are in the range of a Trevor Lawrence, of a Kyler Murray, of a, basically those two. I don't think you can get like an Anthony Richardson or somebody like that. I think you're probably better off aiming for Lawrence or Dak or maybe Tua, Purdy, Cousins now. Which honestly in the analyzer, like that's an L for you. But if you factor in like Fields' depreciating value, just a couple third round picks, nobody really wants Russ. I think if you're just able to turn all three of those into like one really solid option, like a Dak or a Purdy or a Cousins or a Tua, or kind of anybody like that, then I think that that's just like a net positive for you. So yeah, hopefully that helped. Hopefully you're able to do that. One quarterback values I feel like are really, really weird, especially when you factor in two quarterbacks that I feel like people just don't really want. Saquon or Tank Dell. I would take Saquon in this. And then I would try to trade him for something more. I think with Saquon, I think you're able to get a little bit higher in the wide receiver rankings. You might be able to get Drake London, or Tyreek, or like Ayuk or somebody like that. That is kind of more the wide receiver range that I'm looking at with Saquon. So I would take Saquon over Tank Dell. 1 second, Philip. I'm taking Garrett Wilson in this. I would take, I always want to go up at the wide receiver position. So any way that I'm able to get off of a inconsistent wide receiver 2, add a late first here or an early second or anything like that, and you can get. Now, I understand that Garrett Wilson hasn't produced like an alpha or an elite fantasy option for at the wide receiver position, but me personally, I believe that Aaron Rodgers is going to come in here and light the world on fire, assuming that he doesn't go be the vice president for Kennedy Jr. But anyway, I think Garrett Wilson as a talent is better than Jalen Waddle in the 112. So I want Garrett Wilson in this one. I understand it from the other way. Like if you believe there isn't really that much of a difference between Wilson and Waddle, you get a free first. I understand that, but I want to go up to Garrett Wilson. And also because I think Garrett Wilson is probably a better asset to then springboard yourself into like the Amon-Ra or the Lamb or the Chase tier than Waddle and the 112. So even if you don't want to stay with Wilson, I think he's easier to springboard yourself up even more than if you had done it with Waddle and the 112. You do love Daniels at the 104. He falls there, or May. How do you like that? Marvin Harrison Jr. at the 101. Yeah, I understand that, but at the same time, I like everything I said with Caleb and stuff like that. Like, I just think that Caleb is. I was thinking if Caleb goes to Chicago, can't pass that up. If he goes to, I think So this is where we're at. If Caleb ends up not going to Chicago for some reason, if Washington trades up or Chicago trades back, those two might happen simultaneously. But if Caleb ends up not being in Chicago and he's in Washington or New England, then I'm fine with taking Marvin Harrison Jr. there and then trying to see if you can get Daniels or May at 104. But I think if Caleb is in Chicago, you have to take him at the 1.01, especially with the quarterbacks that you have and the uncertainty that you still have with Bryce and Levis. So I would take Caleb at 101 and then just maybe you end up taking two quarterbacks, or maybe you get Malik Neighbors there at the 1.04. That I don't really think you have necessarily a bad decision, so to speak. It's just trying to find the more optimal decision, which I think is Caleb in Chicago. In a one quarterback league, Amari Cooper or DJ Moore. I would take DJ Moore on this. You get a little bit of age back. Um, I still think the upside is still there for DJ Moore. I mean, they both have the ability to put spike weeks, but I'm more looking at age and current value for both of them as well too. I think DJ Moore holds more value, so you're able to sell him for more um, if you needed to. So I would take DJ Moore on this one. JT or the 108 and Spears in a 12-team Superflex start 10. I would take Jonathan Taylor on this one. I think Spears' value took a massive hit. So this is basically like saying, would you trade the 108 in a second for Jonathan Taylor? And I would take Jonathan Taylor over that. Sell Quentin Johnston while you can. Yes, absolutely. Kevin, thanks, Addison. Been a DLF, 4-year DLF member and won my league the second season. Thanks to you guys. Been playing free Dynasty football these days. Thanks to you. Hey, love to hear it, Kevin. Hopefully we can continue letting you play some free Dynasty fantasy football. Just keep winning championships, keep paying for your dues down the road. I love that. Appreciate you, Kevin. How do you feel about this trade I just made in a 12-team, one quarterback, 103, 112, 25 first for and Garrett Wilson for Justin Jefferson, DeAndre Swift, and a 26 first? Holy moly. This is a big one. I will never say no to Justin Jefferson. To me, basically the way that I see this is like Garrett Wilson and Rome Odunze for Justin Jefferson makes sense. And then Swift for the 112 and a one quarterback, I think that makes sense. And if you've got to swap a 25 to a 26 first to do all that, then I think that's totally fine. So give me Justin Jefferson, DeAndre Swift, and the 26 first. I think it makes sense on the other side too, especially if the other side is more pushing towards a rebuild. You're able to just break up Justin Jefferson and Swift into more assets, into Garrett Wilson in the 103 and the 112 and a 2025 first. I get this completely from both sides, but I lean Justin Jefferson here on this one. A little bit long-winded, but this was inside in the same league that I got those two trades done. I want to push for the chip this year, but I'm not sure where to focus my assets to go after it. This team is insane. So in it is an 18 league, so I guess it's insane because it's 18. But in a start 8 league, right? So you're starting, let me see, one quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, and 2 flex, or maybe 3 wide receivers and a flex. But you're starting 8. I would be doing everything I can to remove depth and just get the best assets possible for your starting lineup. So from what I see right here, like you have Chase locking down your wide receiver 1. I think Garrett Wilson locks down your wide receiver 2. And then between Nico and London, you got that as well. But is there a way that you can turn Wilson and Jaden Reed into like CeeDee Lamb or something like that, or Amon-Ra? Now you have Chase and Amon-Ra. And then you could turn Nico and Hollywood into, I don't know, Puka or something like that, or Tyreek. Basically trading up at the wide receiver position to just lock down the best starters possible every single week. And I still think even with the assets that you have here, I mean, you have 6 really like elite to really solid wide receivers right now, that if you do a couple 2-for-1s, then you're still going to have 4 or 5 options, which if you only need to really start 3 or 4 every single week, like that still gives you a little bit of an extra depth for bye weeks or in case somebody gets hurt. And you have JSN down there too. JSN bled in with the running back there. So yeah, I think 2-for-1s just with the wide receiver position, just to try to get you. Can you come out of this with Chase, Amon-Ra, and Puka, or Chase, Amon-Ra, and still have Garrett Wilson, or Lamb? Like that's what I would be trying to do at the wide receiver position. Running back, I think you're pretty set on. Taylor locks down your RB1. Cook and Javonte are going to be your RB1 and 2, especially if you have the wide receivers and they're playing in your flex spot. You don't need to start more than 2 running backs. So I'm pretty good with that. And I like having the extra depth at the running back position as well, too, because it gives you the flexibility that if guys get hurt, running backs always get hurt. So I think it's easier to find replacement options for the running back, especially if your wide receivers are better than every other team in that league. That just plugging in an RB2 that's starting as a handcuff is not going to kill you. And then you have Burrow and Kyler. It's an insane team, dude. But that's how I would attack it. 12/9, Superflex, 6 point per passing touchdown. What wide receiver range would you expect in a trade for Tua? Oh, good question. Superflex ADP. I'm always just double checking because I have the answers in my head, but I'm always just double checking ADP just to make sure they make sense, and they do. So with Tua, I think you can net a top 5 wide receiver, maybe not like Lamb or Chase or anybody like that, but I think that you could very reasonably expect Amon-Ra, Puka, AJ Brown, or Garrett Wilson. I think those are the 4 wide receivers that you can expect to get in a trade for Tua, or should be looking to get in a trade for Tua. And if you have good quarterbacks to where the Tua is kind of expendable, then I'd be willing to do that. But I would take Tua over. I'd take Tua over Tyreek. That's kind of an age thing. I'd take him over Malik Neighbors or London or anything like that. Still in a super flex. But if you're able to basically get a top 5 guy, or AJ Brown, who only 5 wide receivers can be in the top 5, but I consider AJ Brown to be in that top 5 tier with Puka and Garrett Wilson as well too. So that's kind of the range I would expect. Yeah, your tight ends are insane too. 12-team zero flex, give Pitman, DK, get Tyreek and McLaurin. Yeah, if you're contending, I'll take Tyreek and McLaurin on this one. Again, this is moving up at the wide receiver position. I love that. Even if you're taking on age, as long as you're contending, you're getting a top 3 fantasy wide receiver in Tyreek and McLaurin. More or less does like 80 to 90% of what either Pittman or DK get. So I would take the big upgrade from Pittman to Tyreek, we'll say, and I'll take the moderate downgrade from DK to McLaurin in order just to get better at the wide receiver position. So I'd take Tyreek. Oh my God. And you have the 102 and 105. You're going to get Malik Neighbors with this as well, too. Oh my gosh, dude. Appreciate everything you do, Essen. You're amazing. Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate you hanging out in here. I've been on the air for like an hour and 20 minutes. All right, let's roll through these last like handful of questions here. And contending, 1 quarterback, 12-team start 8, Tyreek or Saquon. I'll take Tyreek in this one. I'll almost always take, especially whenever their ages, given the position that they're in, when you adjust for position, their ages are relatively similar. I'll take the better wide receiver than the better running back. So I'll take Tyreek. Mustang, what's up, dude? With my quarterbacks want to win now. Sorry, I got a notification. Anyway, sorry. With my quarterbacks want to win now, no 24 picks, moves to make. Yeah, you definitely have the quarterbacks to compete here. Bijan Henry. I'm going to give you the same exact formula as I was giving Jay, is trading up at the wide receiver position. How can you turn Higgins, DK, JSN, and Olave into Amon-Ra or Lamb or Puka or somebody like that, you know? Because it makes your lineup decisions a whole heck of a lot easier in season when you're not deciding between 4 guys that all feel very similar. B, it makes your lineup better because you have somebody who has the ability to score like 30 fantasy points in a week, while also having the floor of like 14 to 15, which feels almost like a solid week for Higgins and DK and Olave, but that's like a bad week for Lamb or Amon-Ra. You know what I mean? So basically, I would be trying to just trade up at the wide receiver position as well too. I like your running backs. Goddard is not terrible, especially in a non-tight end premium. You can get away with a tight end like Goddard. But that's kind of the prescription that I would give you for pushing more towards competing is upgrading those wide receivers, doing some 2-for-1s. Even in a start 10, that's what I would be doing. John says the same thing. John knows. Appreciate you, man. I don't know if you're still in here. This was like 7 minutes ago, but yeah, have a great weekend, John, and appreciate you hanging out in here and giving people answers before I get to them. Because John just says all the same stuff. I should have him up here right next to me. 12-team super flex. Give Lamar the 112, 209, 210, 25 first. Get Love, Chase, and DK. Oh my goodness. So let's effectively cross off Lamar and Chase. I would take Lamar over Chase, but I want to see what happens if I just kind of cancel them out. So then it's 2 firsts and 2 seconds for Love and DK. I would take Love over 2 firsts, and I would take DK over 2 seconds. Am I saying take Love, Chase, and DK in this? I think I am. I think with how the rest of it shakes out, I think it makes sense still, even if you're losing Lamar. I don't love losing Lamar, but I think the way that the rest of this deal is structured, I feel like it makes sense value-wise. So I think I'd take Love, Chase, and DK. Wow. I don't love losing Lamar. So maybe if you value Lamar a little bit more, you value having a top 5 guy, then maybe you add a little bit more to that, a little bit more weight to that side, and you want a little bit more back. But I think value-wise, it makes sense to get Love, Chase, and DK. Seth, in a 1-quarterback, 12-team start 9 Dynasty League, only can hold 10 keepers each year. Would you trade the 106 and Olave for Amon-Ra and Zamir? Yes. So the clarification question here, Seth, is the 106 then essentially an 11th round pick? Is that what I'm hearing? Like you would get the 6th best player available from the players that were not kept. Is that how I'm reading this? If that is the case, then I easily want Amon-Ra, St. Brown, and Zamir White. More so for Amon-Ra, but you get the possibility that if Zamir survives, then he could he could be a great keeper as well too. But if that's how the 106 is defined, then I would take Amon-Ra here. If the Bears stick with Fields, what do you think he will do with that new look offense? If the Bears stick with Fields, then Keenan Allen's going to be really mad, and Fields will be a top 10 fantasy quarterback. That's what it is. I feel a sneeze coming on, and now it's going away. Oh, that's the worst feeling ever. Boring offseason. Yeah, it's been terrible. Oh, I need to sneeze to get this out, but it's not coming. Thank you, PM. Appreciate you in here. Matthew, Dynasty Superflex. Pickens sits my bench, bundled Tank and Pickens for Garrett Wilson, AJ Brown type. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Perfect example of I love 2-for-1 upgrades at the wide receiver position. So absolutely, I would do this for Garrett Wilson or AJ Brown or Puka, or I would do it for Tyreek. I might honestly do it for London. But yeah, that would be phenomenal if you can get that. Are Brian Robinson and Singletary okay as RB2s? The rest of your starting roster is great. I think they're fine. I honestly, this is more for Brian Robinson. I don't really consider Devin Singletary to be, I don't know if Singletary survives. I'll put it that way. I would not be surprised if, as running backs fall down the draft board, if that is what happens, if, the Giants kind of pull the trigger on somebody. But I think he'd be fine if he ends up surviving. Brian Robinson will still be fine. I think he'll end up, just kind of being a touchdown dependent guy, which he's been his entire career essentially. But like Gibson got like 60 targets or something last year. And Robinson was still fine. So if Ekeler gets 60 targets and kind of just is a 1-for-1 replacement for Gibson, and Robinson keeps his role in a new look offense with a better quarterback, that probably isn't the worst thing. So if you want, you could probably grab a cheaper other running, like if you can grab Mixon or Aaron Jones or James Conner, then that gives you another chance at an RB2, I think they're okay. Have the 101. Is Marvin still the guy, or if Neighbors goes to the Chargers, would you rather have him? The only way that I would take Neighbors over Marvin if Neighbors is in LA is if Marvin goes to New England. Because to me, how that would work then is that New England still does not have a quarterback, and maybe they drafted Nix or Penix or somebody like that, or somebody later in the second round or third round, to where that's Marvin Harrison Jr.'s quarterback, and then Malik Neighbors gets Justin Herbert. That's probably the only way that I would take Neighbors over Marvin Harrison Jr. But if Marvin Harrison goes to the Cardinals, Neighbors goes to the Chargers, Marvin Harrison all day. Oh, you're a Pats fan? Yeah. Then maybe you want to take Marvin Harrison as a Pats fan. I think you're taking a quarterback. I hope that you guys take a quarterback. So that's your starting lineup. Also have McBride on the jeez. Any moves? Get rid of Burks. I don't know if you can anymore now with Calvin Ridley signing. Man, your bench is kind of dead. You got hit hard with some free agents, dude. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's essentially it's essentially either trying to find a better RB2 or trying to find some other depth piece. Like if you have better, you can get some better depth wide receivers. That's kind of it. Do you have picks? I hope you have picks. Because that could change how you do some of the stuff and how you attack the depth. Appreciate you, Elias, and thank you guys in the chat. Killer content every time. Appreciate you, Jay. Thank you for hanging out for the past 90 minutes, and thank you for the questions as well. Paul says hi. Hi, Paul. He's playing in an 8-team, 2-quarterback plus Superflex. So you start 3 quarterbacks. I'm assuming by that 2-quarterback and Superflex. Start 13 league. How would you value quarterbacks in this case compared to a regular 12-team Superflex? Would you value them higher since we can start 3? So yeah, I would probably value them higher because even though 24 quarterbacks are realistically being started every single week, which is the same as like a 12-team Superflex, where everybody can start 2, I would still value them, I think, a little bit higher because I want the optimal route is to be able to start 3 quarterbacks. I don't want to have to start the 2 that I'm required and then the Superflex not be a QB. Or not be like a quality QB. Like if you were starting like Bailey Zappi or something last year. I mean, maybe you had to have, but like if your third quarterback is like Derek Carr or somebody like that, was Sam Howell or anything, like I would value them more to the point where I want like 3 top 20 guys. I want in an 8-team league, it's very possible to be able to have 2 top 10 guys at wherever they are. If it's like Mahomes and Jordan Love, or if it's Burrow and Kyler, if you can have any 2 of them, or maybe it's Dak gets thrown in there as well too, or Trevor Lawrence, having 2 kind of those guys, and then having a third that's like a Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield type of quarterback. You know what I mean? So I think I would value quarterbacks more in the sense that I just want to prioritize having that as my pieces, than just having having 2 in a super flex league. You know what I'm saying? Hopefully that made sense. I don't know if I articulated that very well, but hopefully that made sense. Oh, I asked if you had picks, and then you already had it in there. So this is perfect. Have 109, 209. So you have the 9s and a 1 quarterback. Should I hold picks or try to make trades with any of them? I think I would hold 109. 109 could be still a solid rookie that you can take. 209 could be possibly traded. Like if you could trade the 209, like I said, for an Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, James Conner, I would be doing that. 309, 409 could be more depth pieces of handcuffs and guys that could ascend depth charts due to injuries or something like that. So I think the 209 is probably the most expendable one if you're able to get another good piece. I'd probably hold on to 109 though, and hold on to your 25 picks as well. Josh Sweat is staying with the Eagles. Nice. Cameron, Superflex, 12 by 10, one ship last year. Trade Swift for the 2.04. Other running backs are Achane and Javonte. All the other running backs are bad. In a 12-team league, I think I would hold Swift over the 2.04. The 204 is in that kind of range of where running backs probably will end up going, but I feel like you're in the range where you're not getting the best running backs that could be available. In my head, if Braylon Allen goes potentially late first round, Trey Benson might be in there as well too. Maybe Corum sneaks in there as well. Maybe Jonathan Brooks. But I feel like the 110 to the 202, 203 range is really the range of like where the more coveted running backs are going to end up going. 2.04 could still end up being a running back, but I don't think it's a running back that you would want more than DeAndre Swift. And it might be a guy that gets propped up unnecessarily due to either a really good landing spot, but doesn't necessarily have the good draft capital. Think Tank Bigsby last year, or Kendre Miller, or Roschon. That might be more of what happens at the 2.04, to where I think I would just hold on to Swift for this rather than trade him. If you get a higher second or a late first, then I would trade Swift, or a 25 first, then I would trade Swift. 106 rookie draft plus all the ones not kept. Okay. And it's best ball. Okay, that makes sense. So then let me find where you were. So it's still in a one quarterback. So so you're not getting like a Dunze or Bowers or anybody like that. I assume that like Marvin Harrison's probably going to be 101. Neighbors will be 102 because they're not going to be better than anybody that's kept in the 11th round or later, essentially. I assume Bowers is also going to go, and I assume Odunze is also going to go. So, yeah, I would still take Amon-Ra in this. And I like it from a best ball standpoint that you could, you might still be able to keep Zamir White. Yeah, so. Cool. Yeah, I would take Amon-Ra in that, Seth. Thanks. Matt says hit the like button. Absolutely do that. Hit that like button and hit subscribe if you are not. Our rookie content is out. It's coming out in full force over the next few weeks, and as we get into the NFL draft. So Justin and I have been pretty busy. So we got some content coming out. So we appreciate you guys. Peter sold Jerry Jeudy for 207 on a rebuilding team. Oh my God, that's amazing. I honestly, that's above going price. I think you kind of stole that one away. Because I think Jerry Jeudy is probably more as a later second, if not even like multiple thirds. Even with the move to Cleveland, I don't think that necessarily bumped up his value all that much. Because he's still playing the wide receiver 2 role with Amari. He's competing with Elijah Moore still, and David Njoku. And if Nick Chubb comes back, they still kind of have a run first team. So I think you got above market price pretty considerably by getting the 2.07 in a Superflex league. So yeah, that was an awesome job, Peter. That was awesome. Oh, you sold him to a Browns fan. Well, there you go. So there's one thing that we can take away from this, people, is that if you're able to find out who the other people in your league are fans of, and you can take advantage of that, do it. So apparently Browns fans pay for Browns players more than they should. Love it, Peter. Awesome. Specker, do you value the 102 non-super flexes here or over other years? Have the 106 and feel it's a big tier drop, so thinking of moving up. Yeah. Malik Neighbors, I've said this multiple times. Justin has said this a couple of times too. Like he would be the wide receiver 1 in a bunch of other draft classes. He would have been the wide receiver 1 last year. He would have been the wide receiver 1 in the year. Let's go back and see. I have my wide receivers up. He would have been the wide receiver 1 over JSN last year. He would have been the wide receiver 1 over Drake London or Burks in 2022 and Garrett Wilson. He would not have been the wide receiver 1 over Chase, but he would have been wide receiver 2 there. I don't know if I would have had him as wide receiver 1 in 2020. Lamb and Jefferson graded out extraordinarily well, but he would have been right in the mix of that. He would have been the wide receiver 1 in 2019 over N'Keal Harry and AJ Brown. I don't know if he would have been the wide receiver 1. He would have been right there with DJ Moore in 2018. DJ Moore is a phenomenal prospect. 2017, absolutely. 2016, absolutely. 2015, he would have been wide receiver 2 behind Amari. And 2014, he would have been in that mix. I mean, Watkins was a fantastic prospect, but he didn't do well. But, we had Mike Evans in there, OBJ, Cooks. So, yes, the 102 this year is Malik Neighbors this year is phenomenal. And especially in a 1 quarterback league, you have the 1.06. I agree. That's a massive teardrop. But because it's a massive teardrop, you might have to pay a little more than what you think. I'd be curious to know what you're looking at to try to move up. But if you can make it work, I would absolutely love to get Malik Neighbors over whoever you get at the 106. Dynasty 1 quarterback PPR, tight end premium. Need running backs. Only have Kenneth Walker as a viable starter. Wide receivers are Puka, Pickens, JSN, Mims, Downs, Cooks. Do I keep 103 and take Neighbors or trade Neighbors or Doomsday Bowers or trade back? No, I would. This is kind of what we were just talking about. What I was just talking about with Specker is that the 103 is a very valuable pick in 1 quarterback as well too, because it gives you a Doomsday or Bowers. And basically after the 1.04 is a teardrop down to Brian Thomas Jr. at 105, and then it's a very big teardrop down. I'm not including where Caleb Williams might go in one quarterback leagues here, but it's a big teardrop down for me from Brian Thomas down to Coleman, Worthy, Franklin, McConkey, any of the running backs or anything like that. So I would keep the 1.03. I'd rather be looking at, depending on how the draft goes, I think I would hold on to the seconds right now, because those seconds might end up being in the range for running backs too. We don't know, but maybe you use a couple of them to then trade up and get a running back there. I also would not be opposed to trading some of your wide receiver depth for running back depth. You might not necessarily need to do that now, but it feels like the landscape of the running back position feels relatively safe. So if you're able to trade like Marvin Mims for Joe Mixon or something like that, or Tony Pollard, that might be crazy, but some people might be Broncos fans, right, Peter, or be really into Marvin Mims right now because Jerry Jeudy got traded, that you could get something good for him at the running back position. Same with maybe even with JSN as well too. JSN could be somebody that you could look to move for, a Javonte Williams or somebody like that. I'm not against those moves as well of using your wide receiver depth to move to running backs, especially if you're getting Odunze at the 103. So yeah, I think you have options here. You don't necessarily have to do anything now because you don't need to make any lineups until September. So you have all summer to figure this out, or at least through your rookie draft to figure this out. So you don't necessarily need to be hard pressed to do anything now, but those are options for you. Where is Hollywood now that he is with the Chiefs? He is still a top, to me, he's a top 30 or 35 wide receiver in Dynasty. I would have him over. I'm losing my voice. Hold on a second. I would have him over like Christian Watson and Josh Downs and Jameson Williams, over D-Hop, probably over Ridley as well too. Maybe over Deontay Johnson, maybe over Terry McLaurin. But that puts him in definitely the top 40 range, if not even closer to top 35. Because we were talking about it earlier with Hollywood. I think that his upside is a top 20 fantasy wide receiver. If he stays healthy, sees 120 targets, goes over 1,000 yards, handful of touchdowns, that's a top 20 to 25 fantasy wide receiver. Whereas I think his floor lives in this kind of back end wide receiver 3 range, kind of like what he's been on a points per game basis for the past few years. So that's Hollywood for me. What's a good return for Mike Williams? He was released, but I feel like he could have a mini career renaissance with a team. If I don't think I would trade him for like a third. I would rather hold on to Mike Williams. I would buy Mike Williams for a third, or even a couple thirds. I think that he's a better dart throw than some of the players in this class, in that range. If you're able to sell him, like if you have Mike Williams and you want to sell and you can get a late second or a future second, that's the return I want. You're probably not getting that, but yeah, I think a third is right around the range for Mike Williams, and I'd be willing to take that bet that he could have that mini renaissance, like you said, with a team like the Chiefs or the Jets. Jets is another great. I didn't mention him before. We were talking about landing spots for Mike Williams. The Jets would be a great landing spot for sure. Although my boy Corey Davis is coming back from retirement, so we'll see how that goes. I don't think he's going to be with the Jets, but do you think this time next year we'll be looking at Luther Burden as 101 in the 25 class, even in Superflex? Yeah, I think we will. Though, unless some quarterback really shows out, like if Shador Sanders shows out, or Ewers, or my guy Drew Aller. He's only really my guy because he plays for Penn State. But yeah, I think next year. I'm not saying that next year is going to be like how 2022 was, where we kind of had like Pickett and we were hoping that Malik Willis would do something. And I was hoping that Sam Howell was going to get good draft capital and Matt Corral was in there too. You know, like I don't think it's that bad next year. There are guys that can definitely ascend up into being the 101 in Superflex next year. But I feel like if Luther Burden repeats or grows upon what he did last year, I think that he's going to probably end up being kind of the 101 in all formats. Patriots. That's with Jaden Daniels. I like Mike Williams with Jaden Daniels to the Pats. Or May. I will be okay with that with the rookie quarterback. Chuba plus the 106 for 102. That's not enough. Honestly, I would probably do 106 and Flowers for the 102. That's where I would go. Yeah, you could try Zamir as well too. Or if you have if one of those 25 firsts looks at maybe being in the same range, 106 or later, then I would use that as well too. I wouldn't do 106 in Ayuk, but I would do 106 in Flowers, 106 in Zamir, 106 in Warren, 106 in one of those firsts. I would do all of those. Chuba's not going to get it done for you. Yeah. Lance, 12 team PPR, one quarterback league, traded the 110 and 301 for Rashid Rice. Absolutely love it. No, I still love it, even after the Hollywood Brown signing. I don't think Hollywood is scary enough to me. I love Hollywood Brown, but to me, he's not scary enough for me to drop Rashid Rice. Rice had a phenomenal end of the season. The expectation was that they were going to add somebody, and Hollywood hasn't been able to stay healthy for a few years now. And to me, he truly is playing the MVS, Kadarius Toney, Justin Watson role, and just trying to be like a better version of all of that. So I have especially in a one quarterback league, the 110, that is such a good trade for you. That's such an easy win for you to get Rashid Rice for that deal. So I love that for you, Lance. And then in a 16-team Superflex start 9, Tua, 25 second and Mims for the 1.02. Yep, I'll take the 102. I will take the 1.02 in that one. Even if it is Marvin Harrison, like you said, you already got the 1.05, so at least you're in the range for another quarterback there, with probably Drake May. Or if for some reason Marvin Harrison Jr. goes 101, then you get Caleb at 102. That would be phenomenal as well too. Yeah, so yeah, give me the 1.02 here. It's just more flexibility, and I don't care about the 25 second and Mims with the rest of this deal. That would be phenomenal. if you could do that. Harrison and Malik Neighbors, 101, 102. Boom. That's perfect, dude. That's how you spark a rebuild and keep things moving for a very, very long time in Dynasty. I love that. Paul, what's your best and worst decision in Dynasty in the last years? I have a litany of bad mistakes. In one league, now this was their rookie year, so it was like week 8 in 2020, week 8 through their rookie years, but I traded away Justin Jefferson and Jonathan Taylor for Josh Jacobs and Mike Evans. That was awful. That was really, really bad. That was like when JT like wasn't doing anything for the first like 10 weeks of the year and then became Jonathan Taylor. That was really bad. I sold 3 first-round picks for Matthew Stafford on a team, and then he got hurt. That was the year after they won the Super Bowl. I was like, oh, I need another quarterback, so let me pay these 3 firsts for Matthew Stafford. That was bad. I made some really bad decisions. The best move, though, that I've made so I bought Tyreek Hill. My home league now, that same league where I traded away Jefferson and JT, my home league, that league now is I have Tyreek, Amon-Ra, CeeDee Lamb, and AJ Brown. So I would say my best decision was my trades for all of those guys. Trading away multiple first round picks and stuff like that. I also bought Joe Burrow while he was injured. So that was fun. I'm trying to think if there's any other ones as well too. I took advantage of somebody who was competing who had Mark Andrews last year. I sold him George Kittle. I'd much rather have Andrews right now than George Kittle. That's not like a best decision, but I think that was just I think that's just going to end up being a good move in the long run. Interesting question. Thank you, Paul. I had to go back and relive some nightmares. I didn't appreciate that, but thank you. 12-team one quarterback PPR just won the championship, traded Addison, JSN for Chase, and then shipped 108 and Ty Chandler for D. So you're going to win the championship again? Do I need to touch this team for 2 to 3 years? This team is phenomenal. So those trades were absolutely phenomenal. In a one quarterback league, having Josh Allen, fantastic. JT Achane, fantastic. Brees, fantastic. Chase, Olave, DK. The only other thing that I could say is if you just try to turn 2 of those 3 other guys in Olave, DK, and T and try to see if you can get like Lamb or Amon-Ra or somebody like that. I will say though, in terms of your question, do I need to touch this team for another 2 to 3 years? I would say no, but also just don't get complacent, So like a lot of things can happen in just one NFL season, let alone if you were starting to look out 2 to 3 years into the future. Achane could maybe not do something. JT is going to be aging out by then. Brees Hall might be on a new team. Who knows what happens with all the other wide receivers? I just don't get complacent. Essentially, I know that wasn't the way that you were going with that. With like, do I need to touch this team for 2 to 3 years? Obviously, you're going to still try to make this team competitive every single year and make smart moves. But it's so easy whenever you have teams like this to just kind of fall into that complacency and take more risks that you necessarily don't have to because you think your team is so good. And then, one injury, one guy retires weirdly, one guy gets traded, one dude gets hit with a domestic violence case. One dude gets shot like Brian Robinson. Like there's so much life that can happen on top of just what happens in NFL games that was it. You didn't ask for that rant whatsoever, but I gave it to you. But no, you're smart. You built this team to where it is now, and you're going to continue to maintain that team, and you won't be complacent. Fantastic job, Peter. On the team that I traded the 110 for Rice, I traded the 105 and 211 for Tyreek. How do you like that one? I was rebuilding last year, but all of a sudden I'm going for it. No, you're absolutely going for it. I love that deal as well too. The 1.05, like I said, In a one quarterback league, the first 4 picks are really valuable because you get Marvin Harrison Jr., Blake Neighbors, Rome Odunze, and Brock Bowers. Then there's a drop off. My 105 in one quarterback right now is Brian Thomas Jr. Maybe it's Caleb Williams, depending on where B2J lands. But there's a drop off from the top 4 to 105. Then there's a drop off down from 105 down again. So just to be able to trade that and get Tyreek, now you have Tyreek and Rashee Rice, and I'm sure the rest of your roster is probably looking pretty good for a championship too. Those are some really good trades, and winning trades like that is how you get to a championship roster. Love it, Lance. But all right, we've been going for almost 2 hours now. I appreciate all you guys for hanging out. If you were with me since noon, that is insane. Get back to work like I need to be doing. Two questions at the buzzer. Have the 102 in a super flex, Marvin Harrison Jr. or quarterback. You have Kyler. Yeah, that decision is going to be made for you. I get still in a 16-team super. 16-team super flex. I might take Jaden Daniels there. It's going to be really hard to pass on Marvin Harrison Jr. Maybe the 101 just takes MHJ, and then you get Caleb, and your decision's easy. But yeah, I might honestly consider taking Jaden Daniels there in a 16 team. The advantage that you have over everybody else, if you have 2 starting quarterbacks, let alone 2 starting quarterbacks that one is a top 10 quarterback and the other one has the potential to be a top 10 quarterback because of his rushing ability, that's just such a game changer for you. This might be a better question to ask after the draft as well too, just to see what happens at the top. If Jaden Daniels is in Washington or New England, and if Marvin Harrison is in Arizona or LA, those could change some things as well too to make those little decisions. But yeah, I might take Jaden Daniels there. Would you sell Zamir? If so, what would you want? I had 2 shares and got a second in one league. That's exactly what I want. Any second round pick for Zamir White, I don't think he survives the NFL draft. And even if he does, he feels like he could be like this year's Alexander Madison, which you would take a second over Madison, knowing what you know about Madison now. Not to say that Zamir White's going to completely fall off the face of the earth by being inefficient and not good. But I just want to take a second over a guy who has been a perennial handcuff for 3 years in the league and now looks like is the RB1 on the depth chart because there's nobody else there, but we still have the NFL draft. So I would take a second for Zamir. But yeah, appreciate everybody who was hanging out for the past 2 hours, essentially. We appreciate you guys asking all these questions and everything. Glad I got to do this again. It's been a while since I did a Friday afternoon AMA. So I love hanging out with all of you guys. Get back to work on Friday or just leave work now because it's early. Anyway, appreciate everybody hanging out. Have a fantastic weekend. And I'm not going to commit to the next Friday with Addison, but hopefully it's soon. So we will see you guys very, very soon for another AMA. Later.